The roller coaster of quality in Christmas Carol adaptations began in 1997 with this animated adaptation starring Tim Curry, Whoopi Goldberg, and a handful of celebrities looking for an excuse to say they did a Christmas Carol. It looks like a direct-to-video movie because it is. It's like watching one of those direct-to-video Scooby-Doo movies, only those had some charm to them. Here we have something new though, a dog. Yeah, Scrooge has a dog now. It's not necessary, but it just so happens he's the most interesting character in this version. Tragic, really. All in all, this adaptation was okay, just forgettable. It's a good thing our next one got back to basics. By the late 90s, Hallmark Entertainment was well underway in its phase of producing classic stories for television with epic overhauls, so it was no surprise when they decided to do A Christmas Carol in 1999 with Patrick Stewart taking on the role of Scrooge. As a character actor, Stewart stays within his range for this one, so a lot of the time it feels like watching Captain Picard just having a very bad day. Still, it works, and the level of TLC that Hallmark gave to the production really shows as well. The older made-for-TV Christmas carols worked with the technology that was available at the time for their special effects. Here, there's no effort spared, and the effects look solid. As for the execution, by now you know pretty well how the story goes, so there's no effort to drastically change the story. That is, until you see what we have next. A year later, TNT went oh so stylish on their audience with A Diva's Christmas Carol. Now with this adaptation, the joke is, it's about a diva! Hilarious! Singer-actress Vanessa Williams plays Ebony Scrooge, a modern-day diva with a major league attitude problem, because, you know, divas are like that. Then one night she's visited by the ghost of her former singing partner, Marley Jacob, who tells her that she will be haunted by Kathy Griffin and the bassist from Duran Duran. Seeing as many Christmas Carol adaptations go the musical route, it seems fitting that they would make one revolving around a singer. Although while the production is gorgeous and Vanessa Williams is hot, the jokes in this one feel very forced and the gimmick gets old. Women can be Scrooges too, you know. In fact, I call for an end to the patriarchy and demand more female Scrooges. Good ones too, because women have every right to be as cold, cruel, and heartless as men. Wait. And in 2001, we got Christmas Carol the movie, just to make sure you didn't mix it up with those other Christmas Carol movies. This one has another star cast just looking to say that they did a kids movie with Michael Gambon, a hilariously miscast Nicolas Cage, and Academy Award winner Kate Winslet. This is another straight-up by-the-book interpretation with the addition of Scrooge about to shut down an orphanage, and two cute mice who add less to the story than BAH Humbug. The only two good things I have to say about this adaptation was the changes made concerning the character Belle. It's kind of nice to see her and Scrooge make amends with each other in the end, even though they won't be getting back together at this point. The other good point was the song What If, performed by Kate Winslet. The song expresses Belle's feelings, wondering if she had actually made the right choice to leave Scrooge. It was also a hit on the UK pop charts after its release, and I just absolutely love listening to it. I mean, who knew Kate was such a good singer? It's just a shame to see that it was delegated to being the credit song for such a mediocre adaptation. Speaking of music, the Hallmark Channel debuted A Christmas Carol the Musical in 2004, starring Kelsey Grammer, Jennifer Love Hewitt, and Seinfeld's Jason Alexander. This one is definitely a mixed bag, with the second half being better than the first. Reason being, the second half finally managed to squeeze some emotional attachment out of me, but the first half was just dull. Frasier makes a decent Scrooge, and that's the biggest plus of this production. The other being the Alan Menken music and its terrific choreographed dancing. The minuses pretty much amount to Alan Menken needing to fire his lyricist for some of the songs, and the ever-talented Jason Alexander horribly miscast as Jacob Marley. I should be frightened, but I found myself laughing at him more than I did Nicolas Cage. The only thing new this adaptation has to offer is Scrooge running into the three ghosts on the street in the beginning, but that just opens up a whole lot of unanswered questions. Basically, this one is passable. If I want to watch a Christmas Carol adaptation with Kelsey Grammer in it, I prefer the one where he plays General Patton. In 2006, BKN decided that what A Christmas Carol really needed was a cute, furry animal cast. Notice how they decided to make Scrooge a skunk in this version because he stinks. Get it? You guys are tough. Actually, the problem here is not having an animal cast, otherwise I'd have thrown Mickey's Christmas Carol under the bus too. The first problem here is in the rushed computer animation. Just when the character designs start looking good, they instantly start looking bad again. Just when the movements start to look decent, they go back into robot mode. And why do all the background objects look like they were rendered on a PlayStation? Worst of all are the changes made to the story. In this version, Scrooge hates his nephew simply because he was jealous of the attention he got from his sister the day he was born. The future predicts that Scrooge will eventually die under an avalanche of his own money, and instead of dying, Tiny Tim will grow up to be the next Scrooge. No adaptation has ever before gutted this story of its tragedy, because without it, we, the audience, don't feel a darn thing. And before you try to tell me that this sugarcoating was done for the kids, might I remind you that the Muppets almost killed off Robin just to get a point across. Thankfully, this barrel-bottom scraping was the lowest point. From here, it can only go up. As of this episode, the latest major Scrooge outing was 2009's A Christmas Carol starring Jim Carrey. Motion capture animation finally came of age here, I think. The style tried not to look too realistic and instead looked very caricaturized, which would have been acceptable on Dickens' terms. This one's not without its flaws. There's a solid effort here and everything is gorgeous to look at. However, the action is overblown in some parts. I understand pushing the envelope with the animation, but the overall loving message of the story is overshadowed by overemphasizing the scarier aspects of the story. But there was something else that this adaptation gave us that was new. 3D!
It was as heavy and long as this 7 Christmas Eves ago. Yours is a ponderous chain.
Thank you for that. All in all, I say this was a decent adaptation. An A+ for the effort, just next time, lighten up a bit more. As an addendum to this history lesson, I would also like to address something else that really started to kick in during the 90s. The Christmas Carol TV crossovers. You've seen or heard of at least 5 of these, I'm sure. Every year a TV series would put on their own rendition of A Christmas Carol in half an hour or less, using the TV show's characters as composites for the Dickens story. And yes, it started long before the 90s. The earliest example I can think of is Mr. Magoo's Christmas Carol in 1962. This trend continued through the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, and it still happens. And it wasn't just kids' shows either. Sanford and Son did it back in the 70s too.
Anything you say, Scrooge.
Scrooge this!
By the 90s, this fad got particularly worse in the sense that these kinds of episodes were practically an annual tradition, because we really needed to stick Martin Lawrence in his own Christmas Carol.
Ugh, poor Charles Dickens.
Also, it didn't seem to matter the level of popularity of the show because everybody was doing it to the point of absurd redundancy. Even 101 Dalmatians, the series, had a Christmas Cruella. Yes, that silly cartoon from the mid to late 90s that didn't know whether or not it was supposed to be a follow-up to the animated movie or the live-action remake. I watched it. Guilty pleasure. I applaud certain shows for not going the traditional route with this story, like The Real Ghostbusters, which had Venkman and the crew traveling back in time and sucking up the various Christmas ghosts. But that idea was funnier on paper than in the execution. I give certain shows some leeway, like Beavis and Butthead and Animaniacs, because they weren't interested in retelling the story as much as they were spoofing it. The best example of a spoof being Blackadder's Christmas Carol.
I've made you a fist. Fist? Yes, it's for hitting. Ooh. And what's wonderful about it is that you can use it again, and again, and again.
The issue is that they all completely miss the point. I'm not expecting any kids' shows out there to get the underlying themes of class and social injustice that was present in the Dickens story. It's just that whenever they do this, it feels forced. They're not doing anything incredibly new here, they're just trying to crank out a Christmas special with the least amount of effort put into the story whatsoever. And furthermore, when Scrooge had his big turnaround and became a nice guy, he stayed that way for the rest of his days. But when TV shows do it, you know they're just gonna go back to business as soon as the next episode starts out. Mr. Spacely's gonna go back to being Mr. Spacely, Oscar's gonna go back to being a Grouch, Fred Flintstone, Captain Hook, Daffy Duck, and even Grouchy Smurf, because otherwise he'd have to change his name. Although I surprisingly enjoyed that one. I liked a DVD bonus feature Christmas Carol adaptation better than the piece of crap movie it was attached to. What are the odds? Good God, that happened too. I've been avoiding watching that one for many years, but just for you guys, I sat through it. Allow me to reenact the painful experience.
I always get emotional at Christmas time, that heavenly time of year. Whether I'm home with friends or out there busting heads, I'm blinking back a sad or a happy tear.
Don Bluth hates you. Don Bluth hates you. Don Bluth hates you. I suppose at this rate they'll be doing a Barbie Christmas Carol.
Barbie in a Christmas Carol. Coming to DVD November 2008.
Don't make me watch it. At least there's some good to come of this mess of a concept. A step in the right direction was one episode of Xena entitled A Soulless Carol. The plot with this episode had Xena and Gabrielle trying to stop the show's throwaway Tyrant of the Week from shutting down an orphanage for celebrating solstice. To do this, they pose as ghosts and one-up Charles Dickens by several thousands of years. When your villains change out every episode, doing this formula works in your favor. The problem is, though, when your show typically ends with your bad guys getting smacked with a chakram and impaled on a spike, a family-friendly ending just feels a little out of place. You want to know how to do a TV show Christmas Carol crossover right? Take a page from Doctor Who. Yes, the BBC sci-fi show that never seems to end got it right in 2010 because instead of just making it a one-off episode, they actually integrated it into the show's main overarching storyline. This episode had everyone's favorite Time Lord trying to deactivate a planetary shield before a spaceship crashed into it. To do so, he had to give the one man in town with the power to deactivate it a change of heart, and once he gets the idea to do Christmas Carol his own way, he doesn't just show the man his past, he changes it, because he can. He's the Doctor. The guy has negative memories about the Christmas holiday, so if you have a TARDIS, why not change the past too? I won't give everything away because the twists that this episode takes with the Dickens formula are too good to be missed. If there's one Doctor Who episode I recommend for everybody, it's this one. I'm not a Whovian, but on more than one occasion I have been dipped in The Who. Lastly, with the onset of web shows ever rapidly becoming a new form of entertainment, we've seen a new kind of Christmas Carol adaptation, one that seeks to integrate known web critic personalities and the certain mediums they review. I consider this to be a new spin on the Christmas Carol TV crossover, and yet the difference is, here it seeks to give certain friends a good reason to get together and do something fun. Yep, that was me you saw there. I'm guilty of my own critiques. As for the mainstream adaptations, we're sure to see this story adapted again in the future, especially seeing as we've also been treated to various spin-offs based on political beliefs and sexual preference. Don we now our gay apparel. Anyway, this is usually the part where I introduce the scale of betterness and try to tell you guys which is better, the book or the movie. However, my scale of betterness decided he was going to take the day off. Something about not wanting to work on Christmas. So, instead, I'm just going to say, pick your poison. Read the book, watch whatever version you want, just do your own thing. As a rule of thumb, I say if you're really looking to enjoy it, pick an adaptation that's closer to the source material. The more direct the adaptation, the more joy will come to you. Now that you guys know which versions I prefer, I'd like to know which versions you prefer. Leave a comment. What Christmas Carol adaptation do you like best? And don't forget to join me next time as I make up for the last episode that I was going to do and then didn't do because I didn't have time to do this one otherwise. Do you get the picture? So, Merry Christmas, ciao for now, and thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. That's the nicest thing that anyone's ever done for me. I may sound double Dutch, but my delight is such. I feel as if a losing war's been won for me. And if I had a flag, I'd hang my flag out. That is sort of final victory touch. But since I left my flag at home, I'll simply have to say thank you very, very, very much. Thank you very, very, very much. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. That's the nicest thing that anyone's ever done for me. It sounds a bit bizarre, but things the way they are, I feel as if another life's begun for me. And if I had a bugle, I would blow it to add a sort of how's your father touch. But since I left my bugle at home, I'll simply have to say thank you very, very, very much. Thank you very, very, very for being such a good fellow. Thank you very much. If you like what you saw here, I have a YouTube channel. You can check that out over there. Got a link. That way you can be updated every time I post a new video. I'm on Facebook. You can check me out over there. If you want to catch news on new episodes of From Pages to Pictures and Highmaytude, go to that page and like it. Also, under my real name over there, just don't bother me too much. Privacy rules apply. I'm on Twitter. You can look me up right over there. Just so you know, on Twitter, the same rules apply in terms of my privacy. Don't send me too many messages. I'll go crazy. And lastly, I'm on Blip TV. You can check that out right over there. Subscribe to me there for direct exclusive access to Highmaytude and From Pages to Pictures episodes and other stuff that YouTube does not want you to see. So that's about it. If you like my videos, share me on Facebook, tweet me, plus me, and do whatever you gotta do on your social networking sites. I really appreciate it. Love you guys, and peace.